They say I was born perfect. That's the lie of being royal. The world sees you polished, practiced, never wrong. From the moment I took my first breath, the court whispered that I would be my kingdom's most precious jewel. Prince Harrison Alcott, the crown jewel of Arden. They didn't see the nights I cried from exhaustion, or the bruises on my knees from bowing too long during rehearsals, or the ache in my chest from holding back every word I wanted to scream. They saw the posture, the charm, the carefully chosen smiles, the product of years of tutors, etiquette masters, speech coaches. That's what I was, a product. But behind the mask, behind the jewel they polished to perfection, was me. Harry. And Harry was not perfect. Harry hated the way courtiers stared like they were measuring my worth. Harry hated the way journalists talked about my face, as if I were a museum statue. Harry hated being praised for obedience instead of choices. And most of all, Harry hated the idea of being a prize, gifted away to another crown to seal an alliance. That's what this marriage was, after all. A deal. A treaty. My body for their peace. Still, I had one secret. One rebellion they couldn't polish out of me. It started when I was 16. The royal chauffeur had gone home for the night. I stole the keys, slipped out of the palace in plain jeans and a hoodie. I drove like I'd never been free before, like the car could cut through the leash around my neck. The streets at night were a different kingdom. No crowns, no cameras, no whispers. Just engines growling and neon lights reflecting off wet asphalt. That was where I found them, the racers. Masked, reckless, alive. And that was where I found myself. They called me Ash, because of the smoke trail my car left behind. Nobody knew who I was under the helmet. To them, I was just another thrill seeker, another body pushing the limits. And I liked it that way. On the track, I wasn't Prince Harrison Alcott, the crown jewel of Arden. I was Ash. Fast. Fearless. Free. And Ash was someone even I could love. Being an Omega in the royal family came with its own cage. Everyone saw me as fragile. Something to protect, or worse, something to control. My heats were monitored, my suppressants administered on schedule. My entire biology was seen as a bargaining chip for dynasties. The press never talked about that, of course. To them, I was a flawless porcelain doll. They didn't know how many nights I'd sat awake, terrified of the future I couldn't escape. But Ash had no heats. Ash had no scent. Ash wasn't an Omega or a prince. Ash was just me. Now, at 20, I was being sent to Vermont to marry King Alaric. I'd seen him on screens, in articles, his face plastered across international tabloids. The Iron Crown, they called him. Handsome, young, commanding, but cold. Ruthless in politics, unflinching in war. And apparently, unenthusiastic about marrying me. The thought should have broken me, but strangely it didn't. If he rejected me, if he cast me aside, maybe that was freedom too. Still, I couldn't help the knot of curiosity in my chest. Who was he really? The icy king the world admired? Or something else entirely? The car hummed beneath me, sleek and black, carrying me toward the Vermont Palace where cameras would flash and smiles would be required again. I stared out the tinted window at the city lights, my reflection ghosting back at me. Prince Harrison Alcott. Crown jewel. Future consort. Omega bargaining chip. But deep inside, I whispered to myself, the way I always did before my hands gripped a steering wheel and my foot slammed down on the accelerator. No crown can touch Ash. The limousine door opened. Flashes of cameras exploded around me like fireworks. I stepped onto the marble steps of Vermont Palace, the weight of velvet and gold pressing heavy on my shoulders. Prince Harrison Alcott of Arden, arriving for his betrothal to King Alaric of Vermont, the herald announced. Questions flew from the press like arrows. Do you look forward to your wedding, Your Highness? Do you think the king will approve of you? Are you ready to be the first Omega consort of Vermont? My smile was flawless, the one I had practiced for years. Shoulders back, head high. Inside, my stomach knotted. The palace doors opened. The crowd hushed. And there he was. King Alaric. Tall, broad-shouldered, every inch carved into the image of authority. Dark hair swept back with precision, a silver crown resting like it belonged there since birth. His tailored black suit hugged a body that looked more soldier than monarch. But it was his eyes that stopped me. Grey. Cold. Sharp enough to slice through all the jewels and titles I carried. I bowed, lowering my head as etiquette demanded. Your Majesty. Silence stretched. I felt his gaze traveling down, measuring, dissecting. Finally, he spoke, voice low, steady, and edged with frost. You look exactly as expected. The words were polite enough for courtiers to hear. But the undertone? Clear. Exactly as expected meant perfect. Too perfect. A doll dressed up to shine. Heat stung my chest. Still, my lips curved in the perfect smile. Thank you, Your Majesty. I'll do my best to honor this alliance. His mouth twitched, not a smile, more like restrained disdain. See that you do. Then he turned. Dismissed me like I was nothing more than a contract delivered to his doorstep. The courtiers whispered, fans fluttering like wings. I could hear the unspoken judgment. The king already finds his fiancée lacking. That night, I lay in the silken bed of my new chambers, staring at the gilded ceiling. The memory of Alaric's cold grey eyes still burned hotter than the camera flashes. He hadn't even tried to hide it, his disinterest, his disdain. To him, I was already a disappointment. A jewel with too much shine and not enough soul. I should have hated him. Instead, I found myself restless. My heart beat too fast. My skin itched like I was trapped in the velvet sheets. I didn't belong here. Not in this cage of gold and silk. Because the truth was, the jewel they paraded today wasn't all of me. There was another part, one no one in Valmont could ever imagine. A part that wasn't polished or perfect. A part that breathed fire instead of court etiquette. And though I had buried that side deep, I knew it wouldn't stay hidden forever. Sooner or later, the worlds would collide. The palace glittered. It glittered so much that sometimes I thought the walls might swallow me whole, drowning me in all that gold and polish. A week had passed since I arrived in Valmont, and every day had been the same. Ceremonies, stiff collars, journalists snapping pictures of me standing beside a king who barely acknowledged I existed. On the surface, I was Prince Harrison of Arden, the perfect ornament of diplomacy. But beneath the surface, I was choking, and if not for Evan, I might have suffocated by now. Evan was my aide in name, my friend in truth. Assigned to me by my father's court, a beta with steady hands and a sharp tongue. He wasn't bound by the messy instincts of alphas or omegas. He didn't bow or flatter me like the courtiers. He just looked at me, saw me, and most importantly, he knew my secret. Which was why, on the third night in Valmont, he'd slipped into my chambers after lights out with a burner phone in his palm. Check this, he whispered, tossing it onto my bed. I frowned, unlocking the screen. It was my ash profile, the one no royal eyes could ever see. And there, glowing at the top, was a message. Rate 12. Midnight. 2 nights. Don't be late, Ash. My chest tightened. Social media, I breathed. Evan grinned. Told you your cryptic post would stir them up. For 2 days I lived in a haze. My mind split between palace obligations and the black message waiting for me at night. By day, I stood like marble beside King Alaric while he signed decrees and held audiences. I watched him from the corner of my eye, his cold profile sharp as steel, his voice clipped, his gaze never straying to me unless protocol demanded it. By night, I whispered plans with Evan. He was the one who found me the car. He was the one who kept it hidden in an abandoned warehouse beyond the city. He was the one who told me when the guards rotated, which routes were least watched. You're going to get caught one day, he muttered as he helped me zip my leather jacket, his hands steady despite the warning in his voice. Then let them catch me, I said. At least they'll know I was alive. He rolled his eyes, but I saw the smirk tugging at his lips. The night came. I slipped out of the palace in a plain black sedan, boring, polished, unremarkable. Exactly the kind of car a prince might use for a discreet ride across the city. The guards barely glanced at me as I rolled through the gates. Halfway down the old railway road, I saw him. Evan leaned against a rusted lamppost, hands shoved into his pockets, the warehouse door yawning behind him. When I pulled up, he whistled. Took your time. Inside the warehouse, waiting under a sheet of dust and shadow, was my real machine. Black as midnight. Tuned for speed, not safety. My pulse jumped just looking at her. Tell me you didn't mess with the alignment, I teased, sliding out of the sedan. Relax. She's perfect. Evan shot back, tossing me the keys. His grin softened. And so are you, when you're like this. We swapped cars in silence, smooth and practiced. He slid into the sedan, already ready to keep driving loops around the city, so the palace trackers thought I was still in it. I slid behind the wheel of freedom. For a moment, our eyes met through the glass. His nod was sharp, certain. Then I was gone. The freight yard was alive. I could hear it before I saw it. The snarl of engines, the throb of bass rattling the steel skeleton of the cranes. Smoke curled into the night sky. When I rolled in, the crowd surged. Faces blurred by shadows, voices rising. Ash! The name ripped through the night, like a spark to gasoline. For the first time since Volmont, I grinned. Helmet down. Will in my hands. The prince was gone. Ash had arrived. The race was a blur of light and fire. Engines screaming. Tires biting the asphalt. Every second, I was balancing on the knife edge between death and glory. And God, I loved it. Here, I wasn't bound by treaties or crowns. Here, no king could command me. No court could cage me. Here, I was fire. When the finish line roared beneath me, and the crowd erupted, my chest heaved with laughter. Ash! 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 I didn't lift my visor. I never did. But as I sat there, drinking in the roar, a shiver slid down my spine. Eyes. Not the crowd. Not Evan, who I knew was miles away by now, covering for me. Eyes sharper, heavier, watching me through the smoke and chaos. I slammed the car into gear and tore back into the night before I could think twice. But the feeling lingered. Someone had seen me, and Volmont would never let Ash stay in the shadows for long. The next morning, I tried to pretend nothing had happened. The race was still a storm in my veins, neon and smoke and freedom etched into my bones. But when I stood in front of the mirror, the reflection was not Ash. It was the dutiful prince again, pressed silk shirt, pale cuffs, not a trace of grease or sweat. The palace staff had already drawn the curtains wide, sunlight streaming in like golden shackles. I told myself I looked the part, but my hands still trembled. Breakfast was worse. The long table gleamed under the chandeliers, polished silverware and porcelain plates stretching farther than the eye could see. Ministers murmured, attendants bowed, and at the head sat King Alaric, every inch carved from stone. I lowered myself into my seat across from him, careful, precise. The smell of roasted bread and fresh fruit filled the air. I reached for a glass of water, anything to anchor me. And then I felt it. His eyes. Grey, cold, unblinking. They weren't hostile, not quite. But they were fixed on me in a way that made my chest tighten, as if he were reading secrets off my skin. I tried to eat. The fork trembled against my plate. Every move, I could feel him watching. Is something wrong, Your Highness? One minister asked gently, misinterpreting the strain on my face. I forced a polite smile. Nothing at all. But my body betrayed me. My scent spiked faintly with unease, curling sharp in the air. Alaric's nostrils flared. I nearly choked on the bread. By the time council came, my nerves were frayed raw. I sat beside him at the long oak table, advisors droning about trade tariffs and international alliances. My pen hovered above the parchment, scribbling meaningless notes. But my skin burned, because every time I looked up, he was watching me. Not openly, no, he was far too controlled for that. But I felt it, the subtle shift of his gaze. The way silence thickened whenever my hands moved. My scent betrayed me again, hot with nerves. Evan, seated discreetly behind me, shifted forward just enough to brush his wrist against mine. A subtle grounding touch. His calm beta scent curled faintly into the air, tempering mine. It worked, for a moment, until I glanced sideways and saw Alaric's jaw tighten, his fingers flex once against the armrest. His nostrils flared again, registering the mix of me and Evan. I froze. He said nothing, but his gaze was heavier than steel. By the time the council adjourned, I was shaking inside my polished shoes. I escaped the hall the first moment I could, pacing the corridors until the palace itself seemed to press in on me. Marble floors, vaulted ceilings, endless portraits of stern ancestors. Everything screamed duty, duty, duty. And beneath it all, I still felt his eyes. As though even when he wasn't in the room, his gaze burned through walls, peeling me open. I hated it. I hated the way my pulse jumped whenever he looked at me too long. I hated that my body, traitorous, omega-soft, fragile, thrummed under his scrutiny. Why couldn't I stop thinking about it? Why couldn't I forget the weight of his aura brushing against me in the courtyard last night, sharp and hungry? That evening, I couldn't stay in my chambers. Sleep was impossible. My skin was hot, restless, like sparks beneath the surface. The air felt too heavy. So I walked. Barefoot, silent, I slipped through the palace halls. Shadows stretched long across the marble, lanterns casting gold across the walls. I breathed in the quiet, trying to remind myself I was still free, still me. But then I heard it. A low hum. Mechanical. Familiar. I followed it down the west wing, steps cautious. It led to a heavy oak door, slightly ajar. The king's private office. I should have turned back, but curiosity clawed at me. I leaned closer, peered through the crack. And there he was. King Alaric, alone in the dim light. His tall frame bent forward at the desk, his sharp features cast in shadows. His hands rested on the mouse, his posture tense. On the screen, my stomach lurched. It was Ash, a still from the underground race. The grainy footage had captured the curve of my body leaning into the machine, the glow of neon lights painting my helmet. Behind me, smoke curled, headlights flared. He wasn't just glancing. He wasn't idly curious. He was staring. His eyes burned with an intensity one had never seen from him. Not the cold detachment he gave me, not the steel mask he wore before the court. Obsession. Raw, unguarded. His lips parted slightly, chest rising in a quiet rhythm, as though even looking at Ash made him restless. My chest twisted so hard it hurt. He was obsessed. Not with me. With Ash. The lie I wore like armor. The mask that had kept me alive, free. And worse, he had been watching me all day. Not because I was the prince he had to marry, but because something in me had reminded him of Ash. The gaze that peeled me open, the questions in his eyes. It wasn't suspicion. It was longing. Longing for a version of me I could never show him. I clutched the wall, breath ragged. My heart pounded so loud I was sure he would hear it. Because now I knew. The king was falling. But not for me. For Ash. It had been a week since I stumbled upon Alaric's secret. A week since I saw him bent over the glowing screen in his office, watching footage of Ash with a hunger that hollowed me out. Every night since then, I told myself the same thing. It was just coincidence. He admired Ash the racer, the way the underground world did. Nothing more. Nothing connected to me. He couldn't know. He didn't know. And yet, Alaric's eyes followed me everywhere. At breakfast, I felt his gaze flicker toward me as I stirred sugar into my tea. In council meetings, when I gave the appropriate polite responses, he leaned back in his chair with an expression unreadable, but sharp enough to pin me to the spot. When I passed him in the corridor, his hand brushed mine. By accident. And the touch lingered like heat under my skin. It was unbearable. And intoxicating. The most dangerous was the golf lesson. I had no talent for it, no real desire, but he insisted I join him. The sun burned overhead, and the manicured lawn stretched out in endless emerald. I gripped the club too tight, feeling like an idiot. Then his voice slid behind me. You're holding it wrong. Before I could argue, his hands came down over mine. Large. Warm. Steady. His chest pressed against my back, his breath brushing my cheek as he adjusted my stance. Relax, he murmured. Don't fight the swing. Let it guide you. But all I could feel was him. The weight of his presence, the raw strength coiled under his restraint. I swung too hard, slicing the ball into the trees. He laughed, a real laugh, rich and low. I hated the way it made my heart stumble. I pulled away quickly, muttering about the sun, but the truth was my body had betrayed me. My skin was flushed, my scent threatening to rise, and I could feel his stare burning into my back as I walked off. From that day forward, I avoided him when I could. And yet, I was always aware of him, of the king who shouldn't want me, but seemed to see too much. The invitation came 3 nights later. Encrypted, anonymous, just like always. Another underground race. Another chance to breathe outside the suffocating walls of the palace. I shouldn't have gone. Not with Alaric's eyes constantly on me. Not with the tension that was coiling tighter with every day. But Ash was freedom. Harry was a gilded cage. And I would suffocate if I stayed locked in the role of the perfect Omega Prince. Kai was waiting, as loyal as ever. He teased me, tossed me the keys, reminded me not to crash the car that wasn't technically mine. I smirked, played along. I didn't notice the shadow, high above the balcony of the palace. I didn't see the glint of grey eyes tracking me as I disappeared into the night. The race burned through my veins like fire. Engines roared, lights flashed, the scent of gasoline and smoke filled the air. On the track, I wasn't Harry the Prince. I was Ash, untouchable, unstoppable, alive. But the high didn't last. By the time I stumbled into the dressing room, sweat slicking my body, something inside me twisted violently. My chest tightened. Heat spiked under my skin, overwhelming, undeniable. No, not now. Not here. I braced against the car, gasping. My body trembled, every nerve alight. My scent spiked uncontrollably, thick and sweet, filling the room. I clawed at my shirt, desperate to cool my burning skin, desperate to suppress it. But heat doesn't listen to desperation. I collapsed against the hood, legs buckling, breath ragged. My bond gland throbbed painfully at my neck, demanding, aching. Panic clawed at me. Someone would smell it. Someone would know. Harry. The voice cut through the haze like a blade. Low. Commanding. I froze. No, no, not here. Not him. I whipped around, vision swimming. And there he was. King Alaric, stepping from the shadows of the garage like he had always belonged there. His aura filled the room, thick, heavy, every line of him sharp with alpha dominance. His grey eyes burned like steel set aflame. You. My voice broke, a whimper caught in my throat. I staggered back, clutching the car for support. You shouldn't. His gaze raked over me, from my flushed face to the trembling hands clutching at my shirt, to the bond gland pulsing at my neck. His nostrils flared, and I knew. He could smell me. The truth I had buried so deep was spilling into the air around me, undeniable. I wondered how long you'd last, Alaric said softly, almost like he was speaking to himself. You hide it well, too well. Stay away. I managed, but the plea shook with weakness. He didn't listen. He moved closer, slow, deliberate, a predator cornering prey. His voice dropped, rough, a growl edged with something darker. Did you really think I wouldn't notice you sneaking out again? My heart stopped. My entire body went cold, even through the fever of heat. He knew. My throat closed, no excuse forming fast enough. His hand braced against the hood beside me, caging me in. His eyes locked on mine, merciless. I smelled it the night you came back. The beta scent clinging to you. The exhaustion. The thrill you couldn't hide. His gaze flicked to my neck, my trembling lips. I told myself I'd wait. That I'd let you reveal it in your own time. He leaned closer, his presence overwhelming, his breath hot against my fevered skin. But this, his eyes darkened, voice almost reverent. This I never expected. My body betrayed me with a soft, broken sound, a whimper I couldn't swallow. Heat flared, shame and desire tangled in equal measure. Alaric's lips curved, not quite a smile, not quite a snarl. I knew you were hiding something, Harry. His voice was a promise and a sentence all at once. He leaned so close I could feel the brush of his breath against my mouth. But I never thought it would be this. The world came back to me in fragments. I woke to sunlight slicing through the heavy curtains of Alaric's bedroom, warmth spilling across the polished floors and glinting off the gilded walls. My body ached in ways I hadn't known were possible. Every muscle protested, every nerve still singing with the memory of the night before. The sheets were twisted around me, sticky with sweat, and for a second, panic gripped me. Where was I? Then I saw him. Alaric sat on the edge of the bed, one long leg bent, the other dangling toward the floor. He was calm, impossibly calm, but there was fire in his grey eyes that made my chest clench. You're awake, he said simply, and the words sent a tremor through me. Aye. My voice faltered, barely more than a whisper. I tried to sit upright, but the weight of exhaustion pinned me down. My hands pressed into the cool sheets, as if the mattress itself could keep me anchored. You don't need to pretend anymore, he said, moving closer, each step deliberate. His gaze roamed over my flushed face, my damp hair, the faint sheen of sweat still clinging to my skin. I know who you are. All of you. I froze. Every instinct screamed at me. Run. But where could I go? His presence was a cage, heavy and magnetic. I stammered, trying to find words that wouldn't betray the shame and heat still burning through me. I'm sorry. For everything. Alaric smiled, a slow, possessive curl of his lips. No need to apologize, Harry. For once, you don't have to hide from me. I blinked, trying to comprehend what he meant. You. I began cautiously. You don't hate me? He laughed softly, almost cruelly. Hate you? You think I could hate you after all this? No. I've been obsessed with you long before tonight. Longer than you could imagine. My heart stuttered. Obsessed? Yes, he said, voice low, dangerous, intimate. Ash, you think it was just luck that I noticed every race, every move, every stolen video you posted? I've been following you, supporting you, sending gifts, always hoping I'd meet you, even if I didn't know it was you under the mask. Everything shifted. My chest tightened, my mind spinning. All those anonymous gifts, the new tires, the upgraded engine parts, the helmet I'd found in the mail months ago, he had sent them. The king I had feared, the man whose gaze could strip me bare with a look, had been watching me, cheering me on, obsessed with Ash. You did all this for me? I whispered, disbelief choking me. I did, he said, moving closer, letting one hand brush against my thigh, brushing heat through me. Because I knew, even before I saw you tonight, I knew there was more to you than just a perfect prince. And now, his hand slid up my side, resting lightly on my ribs. Now I finally have you. I trembled, not just from fear or lust, but from the impossibility of it all. The man I feared, the king I believed would never want me, had always wanted me. The days after were a slow, intoxicating blur. Alaric and I began spending time together in ways that were both intimate and terrifying. He was careful, always asserting the dominance of an alpha, but he also respected the parts of me that still needed space. We walked in the gardens at night, the moonlight painting silver patterns across our skin. He taught me to ride horses, guiding my hands as we trotted, pressing close enough that I could feel the heat of him without words. Dates became frequent, subtle and elegant, often behind the walls of the palace where no one could see us. His hand would brush against mine, lingering longer than necessary, his gaze dark and piercing whenever our eyes met. Every touch set my skin alight, every whisper sent shivers down my spine. And then came the racing. I hesitated at first, fearing the old thrill would awaken my heat too soon, but Alaric insisted. He had built something for me, a secret track, hidden in the outskirts of the country, lit by soft floodlights and lined with everything a racer could want. "You don't have to hide," he murmured as I approached, helmet in hand. "This is yours. Mine to give. I want you to race freely, Ash freely, as yourself." I stared at the track, my chest tightening. The gesture was overwhelming, romantic in a way I hadn't imagined a king could be. And yet, underneath, it was perfectly him, obsessive, possessive, claiming. I looked at him, eyes wide, and he only smiled, that slow, knowing smile that left no room for denial. "You're mine, Harry," he whispered, leaning close. "And no one else will ever have you." The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of stolen moments, racing nights, and nights spent tangled in the bed of a man who could no longer pretend he didn't want me. Our romance grew, shifting from stolen touches to heated arguments, to laughter shared over wine in the moonlight. And then, the signs came. I had been feeling off for days, tired, nauseous, craving strange foods. At first, I thought it was the stress, the adrenaline from racing, or maybe just the heat playing tricks on me. But when I looked at myself in the mirror one quiet morning, hands trembling over my stomach, the realization hit me like a lightning bolt. I'm pregnant. The room spun. My chest tightened, and I felt tears prick at the corners of my eyes. This wasn't just about the heat anymore. This was real, permanent, unstoppable. And Alaric. My gaze drifted to him as he emerged from the doorway, leaning casually against the frame, eyes tracking me with a mixture of curiosity and something deeper. "You're glowing," he said softly, stepping closer. "Is it?" I nodded slowly, hand pressed to my stomach, voice barely a whisper. I'm pregnant." His expression shifted, from surprise to something softer, possessive. His lips curved into a gentle, almost reverent smile. He came closer, sliding an arm around my waist, pressing me against him. "You're mine," he murmured, his voice steady and certain. "And now, you carry a part of me with you." I leaned into him, overwhelmed by the heat, the love, the obsession that had shifted from a shadow in my mind to a tangible reality I could hold in my arms. The race, the gifts, the attention, all of it, every meticulous, obsessive detail, had led here. And now, I had no choice but to surrender, body and soul, to the king who had always wanted me. But not knowing if he wanted me for the real, me not Ash the racer, it was a question I had wrestled with since that night in the track room. Since the night when the lives of Prince Harry and Ash, the street racer, had collided so violently. Alaric's obsession with Ash had always been unmistakable, intense, consuming. And I had convinced myself it was a reflection of who he truly desired, not me. Every lingering glance, every subtle touch, every heated look from the king had me questioning whether it was ever about Harry, the man before him, or Ash, the fantasy, the thrill, the persona. I pressed my fingers against my stomach, grounding myself, trying to feel the life within me, and not the doubt. Maybe I'm not enough," I whispered to the empty room. The soft click of the door made me flinch. Alaric stepped in, tall and commanding, but his gaze softened the moment it landed on me. His hands found my waist, and for the briefest moment, the world fell away, leaving just us. "You've been quiet," he murmured, his voice low, intimate. "What's weighing on you?" I hesitated, my throat tight. I don't know if you love me, or Ash. Maybe all of this." I gestured vaguely at my stomach, the growing child, the life we were trying to build. "Is just part of your obsession with him. Maybe I'm not the one you truly want." Alaric's grey eyes darkened, then softened. He reached up to cup my face, thumbs brushing over my cheekbones, steady and grounding. "Harry," he said, voice unwavering, "I love every version of you. Ash, Harry, reckless, timid, bold, proper. all of it. Every part of you is mine. Every part of you is beautiful. I claim you. Always. My chest tightened. The words wrapped around me, warm and protective, and for a fleeting moment, I allowed myself to believe them. He leaned closer, lips brushing softly along my temple. I've loved every part of you since the beginning. Every heartbeat, every flaw, every reckless, thrill-seeking moment. You are mine, Harry. Not Ash, not anyone else. You. Tears pricked my eyes. I wanted to believe him, but doubt clung stubbornly to the edges of my mind. So I did what I often did. I withdrew, needing space to process. I wandered through the palace gardens, fingers brushing the smooth stone of the fountain railing, watching the sunlight dance across the petals of flowers. The racing track, distant and gleaming, reminded me of Ash and the life I had tried to keep secret. I let myself breathe there, alone, for hours, turning Alaric's words over in my mind. Perhaps he truly loved me, all of me. Perhaps the obsession I had feared was something far deeper, protective and possessive, not just a fascination with Ash. Weeks passed in this quiet rhythm. Alaric never left my side for long, but he gave me space to come to terms with my fears. We shared stolen touches, soft glances in the corridors, the occasional playful push in the gardens. Slowly, I began to trust him. But peace, it seemed, was fragile. Lady Seraphine Valcourt had learned my secret, piecing together the dual identities I had kept hidden. One evening, as I returned from the private track, my phone buzzed incessantly. Headlines flooded in. Prince Harry's hidden life. The racer behind the crown? Royal scandal. Ash or Prince Harry? The King's Omega exposed. Secret identity revealed. I sank to the bench in the gardens, hands trembling, stomach twisting. The world had discovered Ash. My careful balance, the dual life I had maintained, was now shattered. The palace soon became a frenzy of whispers and pointed glances. Courtiers murmured behind fans, reporters filled the hallways with questions, and even loyal servants seemed uncertain, unsure of what to make of the revelation. I felt naked, exposed, every secret laid bare before eyes that were hungry for scandal. Before I could fully grapple with the shock, a letter arrived, my parents' arrival foreshadowed by warning messages over the last few days. I knew they were coming, their storm would hit soon. My pulse quickened. When they entered the palace, it was with fury that had been meticulously rehearsed over weeks. "Harry," my father barked, voice sharp as steel. "We've heard the news. What is this behavior? How could you be so reckless, living a secret life as some racer?" My mother's hands shook as she added, "The king will not support this. You must step aside. You are not fit for the palace, for the heir." I felt my knees weaken, my chest tightening, not just from their words, but from the weight of judgment that had been waiting for me my entire life. I wanted to shrink into myself, disappear into a corner of the palace, but the hand on my shoulder reminded me of one thing I could count on. Alaric stepped forward. The court fell silent. Cameras paused. Even the murmurs of the courtiers faded beneath his commanding presence. "Prince Harry is my queen," Alaric began, voice calm but laced with steel. "He's carrying the future heir. He is my Omega. He is the one I have claimed. Any doubts you hold, any whispers you murmur, are irrelevant. Harry's place is here, with me, and anyone who questions that will answer to me." Even Seraphine froze, her perfectly composed smile faltering as the authority in Alaric's declaration cut through the room. Whispers died. Cameras clicked, reporters paused, and for a moment, the entire court seemed suspended in awe. Alaric gestured toward me, grey eyes softening just enough to remind me of his devotion. "We will proceed with the claiming ritual before the wedding. Harry is mine, officially, before all the world. Any objections will be disregarded. Seraphine, your ambitions are meaningless here." I felt my knees weaken, my chest tightening, not from fear, but from awe, relief, and a surge of emotion I could barely contain. He truly loved me. Not Ash, not some perfect image, but me. Later, in the quiet of our chambers, Alaric pressed me close, lips brushing along my jaw and neck with possessive tenderness. "You can race all you want," he murmured, fingers tracing the curve of my shoulder. "But remember, you're mine. Always." I leaned into him, letting the warmth and obsession wash over me. The racing, the leaks, the court, none of it mattered. There was only us, and the life growing inside me. Days passed. The media storm eventually quieted, though whispers lingered in the court. Alaric never wavered. He was at the private track for every race, every training session, every stolen moment. One evening, after a particularly exhilarating run, I pressed my hand over my stomach instinctively. Alaric's fingers entwined with mine, and he murmured against my ear. "You thrill me more than any race ever could, Harry. Every version of you. Ash, Harry, reckless, proper. I love it all. Every heartbeat, every flaw, every thrill. You're mine." For the first time, I allowed myself to truly believe him, to trust him, to feel the possessive, unwavering devotion that had been his from the beginning. And as I gazed at the private track, the sun glinting off the asphalt, I knew I didn't need to hide anymore. He loved me. Every part, every version. And together, we would face the world, the court, the media, and the life we were bringing into it. The world could whisper, judge, and scheme. Seraphine could plot. The press could speculate. But here, in the sanctuary we had carved together, we were untouchable. Possessive, devoted, and irrevocably ours. The morning sunlight crept through the palace windows, spilling over the large four-poster bed where I lay half asleep, one hand resting over the soft curve of my stomach. Well, not anymore, since our little whirlwind was now 2 years old. The familiar patter of tiny feet echoed down the corridor before I even opened my eyes. "Mama, Daddy." I blinked, and there he was, our son, full of energy and mischief, waving his little hands wildly as he climbed onto the bed. His hair stuck up in every direction, chestnut like mine, eyes sparkling with curiosity that mirrored both Alaric's sharp gaze and my own warmth. Alaric appeared in the doorway, sleeves rolled up, hair slightly mussed, looking every bit the imposing king and every bit the loving father. His grey eyes softened when they landed on me and our son, but the alpha dominance never left his posture. "Good morning," he murmured, voice low and teasing. "Trying to sleep through your child's attempts at world domination again?" I groaned, pulling our son onto my chest. "Apparently so. You've been missing your morning chaos, Your Majesty." Alaric chuckled, stepping closer, brushing his fingers through the child's hair. "Chaos is mandatory for a proper royal upbringing. I insist." The next few hours passed in a blur of spilled juice, mismatched socks, and playful bickering over who got to hold our son first. The dining hall was alive with the quiet buzz of the palace staff, trying not to interfere, while courtiers peeked in to witness our domestic madness with polite amusement. Alaric, ever the king, handled it with a mixture of humor and possessive authority, gently scolding our little one when he climbed the table, but letting him giggle through every misstep. Breakfast had been a test in patience. Our son had decided the king's morning papers were excellent for building forts, and Alaric had scooped him up mid-attack, cradling him under one arm, while still maintaining the calm command of a ruler. I couldn't help laughing at the absurdity, tracing my fingers along Alaric's arm as he carried our chaos around the hall. A small memory floated in my mind. The day we had been married. It had been a quiet, intimate ceremony, with the formalities of a royal wedding softened by our insistence on personal touches. The private vows, the racing-themed embellishments that only our close circle understood, and the ceremonial claiming ritual that had marked me as his before the public eye. I had walked down the aisle in a suit designed for both elegance and freedom of movement, and Alaric had looked at me with that same intense obsession that had never left him. "Do you remember how nervous you were?" Alaric whispered, as he handed me our son, now toddling between us, pointing at everything in the room. "I do," I said, smiling softly, brushing a lock of hair from my face. "I also remember you nearly scaring every guest by staring at me like I was some prize you had claimed for life." Alaric's grey eyes twinkled with amusement. And I would do it again. Every single time. After breakfast, we took to the palace gardens, letting our son chase a small toy car along the stone paths, giggling as he navigated the obstacles with surprising skill for a 2-year-old. Alaric and I fell into our usual banter, discussing court matters, racing schedules, and of course, parenting strategies, all while dodging the tiny chaos maker charging toward the fountains. "You know," Alaric said, sweeping our son into his arms as he neared a fountain, "I never thought I'd find a rival who could challenge me in speed, agility, and stubbornness at the same time." Our son laughed, trying to wriggle free, while I pressed a kiss to Alaric's temple. "I'd say he's already inherited half of your alpha instincts and all of my chaotic charm." Alaric's laugh rumbled through his chest, a sound that had become my favorite after 2 years of life together. "And you still managed to survive it, my Omega?" I rolled my eyes, laughing. "Barely. But someone has to, right?" Later, the day shifted toward official duties. The palace prepared for the weekly council meeting, with courtiers straightening gowns, polishing silver, and whispering behind hands. Our son, of course, refused to be left behind. He toddled into the Grand Council room, dragging a small toy sword along the marble floor. Alaric picked him up with one arm, holding him above his shoulder like a conqueror introducing a young heir to the court. I leaned against the doorframe, watching Alaric's duality in motion, the king commanding respect, the father overflowing with warmth, and still, the possessive alpha who never let go of me. Our son's laughter echoed through the room, cutting through the tension of royal protocol like sunlight breaking through clouds. When the meeting ended, we returned to our private quarters, the palace quiet again except for the occasional footstep of staff and the soft hum of the city beyond the walls. Alaric's hands found mine instinctively, fingers intertwining, as we watched our child play with a small toy horse. "You've changed me," I whispered, leaning against him. "Parenthood, marriage, this life we've built." Alaric pressed a kiss to my temple, brushing his lips across my forehead. "No," he murmured, "you've changed me. You, Harry. Ash, every version of you has made me better, more complete. You are mine, and this family is ours. Always." Our son suddenly toddled over, tugging at both our hands and giggling. "Race! Race!" he shouted, pointing toward the private track beyond the palace walls. I laughed, sweeping him up. "Looks like someone has inherited a love for speed." Alaric smirked, brushing back my hair, his possessive energy never dimming. "Then let's give him a proper start. You race him, I'll challenge you both." We ran toward the track, our little family weaving through the gardens, sunlight glinting on the cobblestones, and I felt a deep, steady warmth in my chest. Royalty or not, ceremony or chaos, our life was ours. Messy, loud, chaotic, but full of love. And as I glanced at Alaric, then at our giggling son, I thought, this is family. Possessive, protective, playful, and utterly ours.